Hey, so welcome back to Dollars and Dragons, and today we have Sarah Madsen with us. Sarah, if you'd like to say hello and perhaps introduce yourself by way of explaining perhaps what the work that you do and then some of the projects that you've been on.
Sure. Yeah. Hi. I'm Sarah Madsen. I am an author and a freelance game writer and designer. I have done work for, I've done stuff for Wizards of the Coast. I'm in their Candlekeep Mysteries anthology. I do work for Kobold Press. I've written a bit for MCDM on their upcoming Flea Mortals project. I've done work for Cubicle 7. What else? Oh gosh, lots of stuff. And most recently, I've been working with Draco Studios on their Dragon Bond setting. Um, I also write fiction. I have a novel called Weaver's Folly out. It's a cyberpunky urban fantasy, sort of if Shadowrun collided with Kim Harrison's Hollows series for anybody who likes urban fantasy. Yeah, that's me.
Super cool. Let's immediately pivot to talking about Draco Studios because you were kind enough to bring me by. And when you went to go talk to them, because you've been working with them for quite a while, if you want to, how did you get on that project? And I think through our mutual friend Lou, but I guess you'll talk about that. And then what's it been like to working with Draco Studios?
It's been great, actually. Yeah, I think I joined up with them. I think it was March, and they were looking. They have this amazing setting called Dragon Bond that they do. So Draco Studios does a lot of things. They don't just do tabletop RPGs. They do minis and they do like party games, and they have a whole pretty wide selection of stuff that they do. And they have a world called Dragon Bond that they were looking to expand into the 5e tabletop RPG realm. And so they were trying to find people to bring on. And yeah, excuse me. I think it was Lou. Yeah, Lou Anders. Actually, they reached out to him and he was busy doing other things. And so he directed them to me, actually to me and Brian Suskind, to see if either of us were willing to take on the project. And we were both very interested. So they sort of brought us both on to help lead their design in their 5e system. And it's been fantastic. Brian's a lot of fun to work with, and we've had a lot of work. I mean, they have an amazing amount of just lore and just stuff in general, honestly. So it's been a lot of work, but it's been a lot of fun. And actually, they just launched their Kickstarter for Itza's Guide to Dragon Bonding, which is sort of a dragon-focused book that's sort of an introduction to the world of Valerna and Dragon Bond. And it's, it talks a bit about the dragon bonding process, which is where a mortal and a dragon sort of form this mystical connection that bonds their life force and their like makes you more powerful, and you form this sort of emotional and psychic, well, not psychic exactly, but it's kind of hard for me to explain, but it's, it's a bond. It's this mystical bond. And so it talks about that, and then there's things to do with the dragon broods themselves, because the dragons in the Valerna setting are a little different than your standard D&D dragons. And we're going to have new magic and new classes and subclasses and races, and rules for flying dragon fights and all sorts of crazy awesome stuff. So it's been a lot, but it's been good. So
Super cool. Yeah, I see that as of the time of this recording, which by the time this comes out next week, it'll be even further in, but it's already 5 times funded. So it's, I
yeah.
believe, initial goal, like maybe 20,000, but it's at 100,000 right now. And there's still quite a few different stretch goals available, a lot of which look really cool, especially the alchemy cooperation, or the collaboration, I should say, of theater of the mind play and things like that, and how that whole VTT system is set up. The world, from what I've seen, is incredibly colorful and interesting from a visual standpoint. So I am very interested in asking you what it was like kind of being on the ground floor for at least releasing this for 5e for D&D and sort of transporting that, and if you had any particular challenges to sort of meld this into a D&D world, or like how does this differ from other D&D worlds that you've written in the past?
So I think the biggest challenge, but I think also what I've found to be really fun and rewarding on this project was it is a setting that exists, but not everything has been nailed down yet. And especially when it comes to, okay, how does this concept here that's really cool in this lore or this fiction, how does that work mechanically, right? So a lot of the challenge that Brian and I have had has been sitting down with the our IP guy and the creators of like the setting itself and really having a conversation about like tell me about this thing. Okay, this race right here. What do they do? Like I've seen what we have written down, but there's so much more at the edges that we sort of need to define. Um, so figuring out how those things look on paper and how they are not only defined enough for somebody to play them, either a PC playing a race or a DM who's portraying this NPC or this monster and wants to do so in a way that's interesting and evocative, right? But also making sure, again, that our mechanics are not, it's not just, all right, well, there's an elf, so it's an elf, right? It's like a carbon copy of every other elf. So if I'm making this sub race for the silver elves in Dragon Bond, I want somebody to look at that and go, oh, I really want to play that, right? So it's our job to take this really cool concept, but also make it so that the mechanics and the crunchy bits reflect that really interesting concept and is evocative and makes you immediately think of like 5 different character concepts that you could put together with this thing. So um, that's definitely been the most challenging part, but it's been a lot of fun to sort of explore a space that is not wholly mine, but is not clearly defined already.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Kickstarter itself and like the amount of detail just in the page because I've seen the quick start guide and I believe that was for an earlier release. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen, I believe, your adventure. Am I
Yes.
okay? And I've
So
seen your adventure.
right. So yeah, Brian and I okay. So for this Kickstarter, we have the main book, which is the Eats' Guide to Dragon Bonding, but there's also the first stretch goal actually is a level 1 to 4 adventure. And we have some other really great writers. It's Brian and I on that, but we also have Jeff Lee, Sadie Lowry, and Anne Gregerson all came on to work with us on that. But Brian and I wrote the first chapter of it, for lack of a better word, that we released at Gen Con, sort of as a little freebie glimpse into what we were doing. And yeah, so Dragon Bond, the 5e, has actually gone through several iterations before it's finally gone to print. So I think they had a different designer on board before, but they wanted to bring somebody a little bit more into, like, involved in the industry to sort of really make it shine. So there may have been like other rules floating around previous to Brian and I coming online, but we really got in there and anything that already existed, we like overhauled heavily. There was a lot of good stuff, but a lot of stuff that also needed, adjusting or pumping up or balancing or complete. There's some stuff needed to be rewritten from scratch, um, just to sort of bring it in line to what we were really envisioning along with the rest of the Draco team. So
Right. For that starter adventure, is that something that people can get right now?
I believe so. In fact, I think on the Kickstarter page there might be a link to it.
Okay. Yeah,
You
I
can
when we find the
scroll.
link, we'll include it in the description, so you don't need to go looking right
Yes.
now.
So, yeah, there's a link somewhere. It'll be in the thing.
We'll put it in the
We'll
we'll
put
put
it
it in
there.
the show notes. Yeah, don't worry about that.
Um, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned colorful visually because the art for this whole thing is just amazing. Like, I'm always just flabbergasted by visual artists because I'm not a visual artist at all. And so, I'm always just amazed at what fantasy artists can do. And we've got some really amazing art. In fact, I think one of the stretch goals, it's either a stretch goal or included in the thing, but there's an art book, there's art prints, there's some sketches that are done up in the style of like a naturalist journal if you're like in the field, like sketching dragons and, making notes. And they're all very like just beautiful. So
Wonderful. And let's pivot to talking about you for a moment because I am very curious, based on your actions working on the vineyard, how your workflow is because I haven't, at least yet, worked with well, besides Lou, but Lou hasn't written anything for me or my project, so I haven't worked with anyone who knows and can just like very easily like pump out the work or do you need to hit? So like, what normal day for you as a novelist, as a writer, and like, you're I believe primarily you're almost doing everything freelance right now, right? That's your income. Okay, let's talk about that.
yes, I am
What's your daily
100%
life like?
freelance. Oh gosh, I get up, I make myself some coffee. I sit at my desk.
Perfect.
Um, so right, so for me, it really varies on the day and the projects that I have to work on, but which is really just sitting down and opening up whatever I got going on and just now, this is not to say that I am banging out like 500 or 5,000 words a day, right? Like some days are harder than others and some projects progress easier than others. Things that typically for me, things that are mechanically heavy typically take me a little bit longer to figure out simply because there's a lot of, okay, what exists already? What do I like? Is there something out there that already does this thing that I want to do? Am I duplicating something that exists? Is it worse? Is it better? So there's a lot more like research. Um, or if it's like, yeah, it just, some things require more research. Definitely
Right.
mechanics heavy things, but I've had other projects too where there's a lot of, hang on, let me double check or triple check this other thing over here. And that sort of slows down the word flow. Um, So I don't have a specific number of words that I try to hit per day. Um, really, it just varies. I just try to hit my deadlines.
Yeah.
Sometimes that looks like a lot of scrambling at the last minute. Um, I do my best not to have to stay up super late, the week before a deadline. But I think I've pinned down a pretty good workflow situation. But I typically work between like 9 in the morning and then normally like 4 or 4:30 I end, but there's some days that I'll sit in front of my computer for like 5 hours and nothing happens.
Yeah.
Um, and then sometimes I'm like, "Oh, hang on, it's 7 o'clock and I haven't stopped writing yet." So it just really varies by day and by project. So
Yeah, that's that's all stuff that I typically hear about novelists in particular, and in that respect, I'm more of an amateur. So, um, but as far as your career progression and like the route that you went, were you a novelist first, or were you a tabletop writer first?
so I I didn't publish a novel until after I had published my first tabletop stuff. But I've
Okay.
been writing novels for a long time. I think I started my first novel when I was just starting college, maybe when I was like 18 or 19. It didn't get very far
Hmm.
um, because novels are hard, y'all.
Right. Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot of words that go on a page. And you don't always, you don't understand that until you sit down and you try to write your own. But I mean, I still joke about though when I was like in 6th grade and writing vampire stories in my notebooks, like I've been writing for a long time, but writing for games wasn't really even a thing that like pinged in my brain that was a thing that people did. Like I knew there were gaming books, I played them. I'm like somebody when you think about it, you're like obviously somebody wrote this and published it and put it in a book, but it
Right.
it wasn't really a anything that had been on my radar until long after I had been like writing novels and stories and that sort of thing.
Very cool. Um, okay. And then what was your first gig in tabletop?
Actually, my first tabletop job was doing it's a book called Oh Beyond oh dang it. I'm gonna mess it up. Hold on.
When you've written on so much stuff that you forget your projects?
Well, it's been so long. The Fairy Ring
Okay.
Along the Twisting Way.
Uh-huh.
And I was actually brought onto that by Scott Gable, who is now he's an editor at Kobold Press.
Oh, okay, okay.
Um,
Met
so
Scott?
he, yeah, so he was doing this project, the Fairy Ring,
Mhm.
and needed additional writers. And we had a mutual friend, and she knew that I was a gamer and a writer. And so she suggested me, and I didn't do any mechanics. I hadn't even played fifth edition at the time, so I was like, I know nothing about the rule system, and he
Right.
just needed me to come on and write like fluff and lore and like
Uh-huh.
develop NPC personalities and stories and stuff like that. So I did one of the chapters for that book, and then it sort of just that was I was like, okay, that was cool and fun. I did a thing, and then it just sort of was the only one I had done for a little while. Um, then he came back because he was working for Kobold Press and they wanted to bring on additional writers for their Warlock zine and their blog. And so he reached out to me to write for them, which I was like, oh, okay, I guess he liked what I wrote. That's
Right,
good.
yeah.
Yay. I was, so yeah, that's sort of where I got started was with that one.
Cool. Global Press. Yeah, nice people. Um, yeah, ooh, sorry. That's why I'm drinking tea right now because, it tis the season. One moment, listeners. Yeah, very nice people. I had the great opportunity that they afforded me to run games for them, and then they paid my way for Gen Con. Um, so that was a great experience for me. I'd never done anything like that at a convention, even though I'd been a professional GM for like half a year at that point.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that was super cool. And the Cobalt Press people are super cool too. So very thankful that I had that opportunity. And it was really cool to like meet people who like write. So that was also part of it. Like, oh, I get to
Hmm.
talk to Wolfgang after playing in Fire of the Ghouls campaign for so long.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah. Anyway, enough about me and my and my good experiences. For you and sort of carving out like this portion of your life to be devoted to making a living as a writer. I think the landscape has changed because let me ask first, what year was it when you first like started moving from part-time to full-time?
This is so last year, 20 May 2020. It's 2022 right now, right? Yes. Okay.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can't keep track. May 2021
Hmm.
was when I made the switch
Okay.
going from just freelancing in my spare time to making it a full-time thing. So,
Yeah.
it's been a year and change at this point.
Okay, how
Um,
long had you been freelancing like on the side before you made it full-time?
a couple of years, I think I did the fairy ring was in 20 like 18, maybe even earlier than that. 2017 was when I did the fairy ring. And
Yeah.
then it was a little bit of a gap between that and when I started for Kobold Press. So probably 2018, maybe 2019 when I started writing for Kobold Press more regularly.
Mhm.
Um, and then I started branching out to other publishing houses and groups. So a couple of years, consistently, like 3 maybe.
Right. And by that time, you had already been writing for 5 to 10 years, perhaps,
Oh,
prior
yeah.
to that?
Gosh,
Yeah.
yes, a lot longer than that.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Okay. Well, I'm not trying to age
no, you're good. It's fine.
um, yeah, so, yeah, and I think that's important to understand, especially for people who are just starting out, especially to fully grasp it, like, people that do spend years of their time before they even get their opportunity as a freelancer to have their work accepted and um, being a creative full time really often means that this person has dedicated a good portion of their life to getting better at this thing and trying out so many different things and failing so much.
And I think that's the important part, right, is the failing, because especially with freelancing, to be I think I'm pretty successful, but even as much work as I've done, like, I don't think I could support myself on as much as I make right now. Like, we are lucky that my husband makes enough that and that's a very, like, frank situation, right? That, like, it just does not pay enough in most cases that it's something that you can support yourself on, which really blows. It's like
Right. Yeah.
we need to, but when you're freelancing, especially, you got to be ready to put yourself out there. If somebody puts out a call for writers, you got to be willing to submit stuff. You got to be, and I don't even do the whole constantly scouring the internet for jobs, right? Um, but you're going to get rejections a lot, and you're not going to get picked for stuff, and like building up that mentality that a no is not really a big deal, that you can't get a
Right.
yes, but like a no is always a risk, but like you can't get a yes unless you put yourself out there, kind of thing, was excuse me, was kind of the biggest thing I think for me to learn. Where the point now, like if I see somebody put out a call, if it looks like a job I'm interested in, um, just throw in your hat in the ring, and whatever happens, happens. And if you don't
Fire
get
and
it,
forget.
you're not in the worst place than you were when you started.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
so it really feeds my need for constant validation too. It's pretty good. It's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. Are you also a Virgo?
I'm an Aries.
You're an Aries? Okay. Well, I'm
Yes.
a Sagittarius moon, so I'm like I'm
I'm actually an Aries, but right on the Pisces cusp. Like, I'm
uh-huh.
first day of an Aries. So, yeah, I got a little bit of that Pisces, but
Gotcha.
yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just started learning about astrology. My girlfriend has been teaching me it essentially, more or less, but because she's super into it. It's kind of fun.
It is.
Just
It's
yeah.
totally real science, and everything is true. No, I love it. And I had actually group of friends and I joke there's like 3 Aries and 2 Aquarius. Like, we've got a little organization of like who is what, and a friend of mine keeps like a list of everybody's, you know, your sign, and then your moon and your rising and your whatever. And I have to go to her every time, like, what am I again?
Yeah,
What's my rising? Am I Gemini? I can't remember.
right.
But yeah, my husband is a Virgo though, so I
Oh,
understand that.
okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you understand me better than you let on. Okay. Um yeah, I think the greatest thing is finding people that you get along with in the industry and then like just doing more work with them. And that has been
Mhm.
kind of, I guess, the quote unquote dream for a lot of people is like they want to, at least for me, and I can echo this because I see the people that kind of put out there that they're very interested in uh, starting a studio or like just creating and like being surrounded by like people that they really enjoy creating with. Um, Finding that careful balance
Mhm.
is kind of fraught with danger, I guess, in a way. But
Well, and it's always tricky because creatives, I think by our nature, we can be flaky and flighty sometimes just because we get distracted easily. Um, but when you find people that you work well with, it's it's a great feeling. And especially if you can find people that you work well with who you know are reliable. Um, and that's the other thing with being in this business is making sure that you're reliable and you hit your deadlines is like one of the biggest things that you can do, because it's really easy to take on a project and it's not always easy to finish it and finish it on time.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, I mean, it's always fun when you join up on a project and you see people that you've worked with before and you're like, "Oh, hey. Hi friends." Um, it's always especially a really good feeling when you join up on a project and you see people that you worked really well with in the past. And it can be very exciting when you get to collaborate with people who excite you, I guess, and creatively. So, yeah.
Yeah, I find it doesn't necessarily like have to. I don't know. I feel like personally, a lot of the, and this is mostly, and I will preface this with like, I have not been in the industry. I'm not an industry insider. So if you're listening to this podcast thinking that I have like booked a bunch of writing gigs, I will tell you officially I've only booked one writing gig. So I have like had the one experience, and then everything else has just kind of fallen together in the project that I'm leading.
Mhm.
So when I see a lot of the headache and then heartache with writers and artists who are involved in projects that aren't run by a big game studio who has kind of polished their process quite a bit more,
Mhm.
the main headaches that I see are professionalism, timeliness, pay, like these like very basic things that like are important to the writer or
Mhm.
important to the artist. And if you can, if you're running a project, handle those things, then you really have set yourself up for success in a lot of ways, because otherwise it's difficult for a freelancer like you to justify them going the extra mile for you, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
And I definitely think so. There's always things that you consider when you're trying to figure out if you want to take on a project, right? And everybody has different metrics about what they look for in a job. But for me, it's things like, pay, obviously. What's this paying? Because if it's paying 3 cents a word, I better be really passionate about it to spend my time on it, right? Especially since I'm not a hobby lancer, right? I'm full time freelancing. I'm trying to make a living
Yeah.
off of this. So I would only go for something that pays low if I am excited about the project, like it's with a company that I really want to try to make headway with, or the people on the project are also really awesome. But usually, if the people on the project are awesome, the pay is usually better because they understand the industry. Now, I understand that, I mean, this industry is hard. Like, it's not easy to make money as a tabletop freelancer or as a publisher. And I understand that, like, budgets are budgets and you have to try to work within your constraints. Like, I completely understand that sort of thing. Um, but, if you can show that you pay well or have a really awesome concept, the good writers will follow, and good writers will follow other good writers. Especially if your first project is, even if it doesn't pay super well, if your first project is well organized and you communicate well and you're just a good, person to work with, the writers who work with that on that project will talk to the other. We talk to each other. We know what's
Do
going on.
you? Oh
Yeah, we
no.
do. We do.
Everyone knows about me then.
We do talk to each other. And so, they'll say, I had this really great experience. Or, if somebody else gets approached to work on the project, they'll, you know, you ask for references. How was your experience? It was great. Or, never really great together, but the pay was really good. So it kind of made up for it. So it's all sort of
Right.
a balancing act. But it definitely is. So I definitely had an interesting with Draco being in the position that I'm in. Um, when we were doing the adventure book, it was the first time I was coordinating a group of freelancers.
Dope, dope.
So it was
How did that
awesome.
feel?
It
How did
was
that feel?
I mean, it was really good, and thankfully, they were authors that I'd all worked with before, so, we kinda had a good communication, and I hope they didn't hate me by the time we were done. No, but, um, but it was a challenge, for me and Brian both coming on and being like, "Oh, we've never actually led a team before," and kind of seeing the holes in our preparation, and also with the fact that, there was so much on the Draco side, on our side, on the Draco side too, about the lore and everything else that wasn't necessarily nailed down. It presented a whole bunch of challenges. But the team, I mean, they did a great job, despite any stumbling blocks that we may have had. But it was definitely eye opening from being on the other side of, normally I just show up, they give me my assignment, I go home, I write it, and I turn it in when I'm done.
Yeah.
Um, versus being on the organizational lead side of it, where I'm like, oh no, I have to actually make sure all of these things fit together and everybody has what they need. So, um, I mean, it's an amazing experience. I can't wait to. I'll be doing more probably, um, but yeah, it was great, but definitely an eye opening experience for
Yeah.
sure. So.
I had that, and one of the reasons why, besides my immense just, uh, besides my audacity, I have a lot of audacity, but besides my immense just respect for M and Michaela Ebel and the co-lead on the Vineyard, and my good fortune that we had connected over some previous business, and then we worked on One Night Straw together a little bit. I was the marketer for that. They were the editor, and just connecting and like making the Vineyard like a thing. I realized very quickly after interacting with M, this is someone who knows how to professionally organize things, and that was one of the major things that I knew understand. Like M is pivotal to the success of this project because of how organized they are. And then the more I get to know M, it's like, oh, it's because you have interacted with Chris Perkins for the past 2 years or whatever on a project. And that's where you've kind of been mentored in
Mhm.
that way, despite them being pretty young. They're at least 10 years younger than me. And I mean, I'm new to the industry, but like, you don't think of like a 24, 25-year-old or
Mhm.
however old M is. Not to out you, M, but um, of being like someone that can be so capable at such a young age. I mean, of course, I saw that like in the military and something like, but that's kind of like a need to have thing. So it,
Mhm.
it was really cool to, and it's been great to work with M for that reason because they are so organized and professional and just impress me every single step of the way. So finding those leaders for a project is super important, and for the same reason
Absolutely.
that I really wanted to work with Elaine Ho as the art director, for the same reason. So, and I've been really pleased and happy with everything thus far. So,
Yeah, it definitely takes a certain skill, uh, that I think I'm pretty good at, but I'm definitely, I mean, it's a learned skill too, right? Like you don't always realize what you don't know until you're confronted with the fact that you missed something. Um, so yeah, the people that are naturally organized just blow my mind because it's a lot of work for me.
no, that's not me. Like, I have this scheduling book because otherwise I would not be organized at all.
Yeah.
So I write
And
down
I'm
all my appointments and stuff.
And I've always been the kind of person where if it's out of sight, it's out of mind, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
it just, and I try explaining this to my very much more like successful younger sister who does not have that problem. Where I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like if it is not in front of me, it does not exist. Like
yeah.
it's so I have a whiteboard where I have like all of my things with all of my deadlines and everything else because I have to be able to just like literally lean over and go, okay, what do I got coming up? All right, okay. Because otherwise I'm not gonna lie, like I almost completely forgot about this this recording
You're not
session today.
you're,
If,
you're not hurting my feelings. That's why we
if
send updates
yeah,
and
and I had a
invitations.
notification on my phone. It like rang at me, and I'm like, "What even is?" Oh, yeah. Okay, that's in half an hour. I should get ready for that. Um, so yes, it's definitely been something that I'm aware of in myself, and I have established. coping mechanisms to deal with it. But people who don't have that, I'm just always in awe of their capabilities. It's like magic to me. So,
Yeah, it's definitely, I believe, a more of a skill than an innate talent. I think some people can be talented in that, but it's definitely a skill that has to be developed and
mhm,
sort of tempered over time and like challenges and working with enough people and like getting that experience. So,
mhm, mhm.
um, yeah, what's a project that you have been thinking about that you have wanted to work on in the future?
Oh gosh. So I actually, do I talk about it? I
Are
don't.
you allowed to? If you're allowed to, then yeah, sure, of course.
No, I mean, are you talking about like a? Mm, So, personal project that I've been thinking about doing, and I'm a little bit well. Okay, so there is an artist, sculptor, a mini sculptor on Kickstarter that does medieval marginalia miniatures, and I purchased a bunch of. He just did his second Kickstarter, and I think he did it
Uh-huh.
for like a week, and um, they were really awesome. These little minis. In fact, yeah, I just almost thought that this was video. It's not video. But anyway, there's little like those little these little metal miniatures based off of the weird little creatures you find in old medieval manuscripts, right? That are
Okay, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
the lions that don't quite look like lions, or like the weird snails with like hats and
right,
things like that. And I just backed it because I thought that it was a really cool, just visual concept to put that in a miniature form. Then I was like, oh, I should make those into actual like 5e monsters. And so I may try to actually write that up and put it up on DM's Guild at some point. Though in his most recent Kickstarter, somebody else did it already for Morkborg. Like they undercut
oh,
me.
yeah, yeah,
They got in
oh,
ahead of me. I was so mad. Like I was literally getting up that morning. I was like, I'm gonna start laying out this project and do my own little personal like medieval miniatures, and maybe I'll contact the guy running the Kickstarter to be like, hey, we should do a thing. And then he emailed all the backers to be like, and here's a Morkborg like thing for these miniatures that somebody's. I was like, well, that took the wind out of my sails on that one.
right.
But there's not a 5e one yet, so maybe I'll do that. And anybody listening, you can't take it. It's my idea. I'm doing it first.
You gotta do it before next week when the podcast drops.
I'll real fast. I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, I've been like since getting a little bit of exposed to Morkborg and in my case Pirate Borg that I ran with an event that Start Playing Games did. Um, Phenomenal products, very interesting in their own right, and just sort
Mhm.
of it's one of those products and that that creator puts out that they understand what it is, and that is so rare to find in creative works. It's like you can it's got great taglines. It's an advertiser's dream. I
Mhm.
look at it and that's why I love it, is because it's like so well defined what it is. Even the art is done in
Mhm.
such a way and it's picked with that holistic creative vision that if you haven't seen Morkborg and you haven't seen Pirate Borg, or like they have Cyborg coming out and all these other iterations, they are not only really fun to play, they're very easy to play, and they are, yeah, I can't recommend them enough. They're super fun. But yeah, for sure. I mean that would be super cool. And I think finding like those little passion projects is a large part of like what fuels us as creatives, is like,
Mhm.
what am I doing and why should I do it? Am I going to get fulfillment out of this? And I was thinking that before I started Vineyard or I started like doing professional GMing and stuff like that, it was really more about, can I make enough money doing
Mhm.
this first? And then what is the way to make enough money so that I can continue to do this thing? And then after that, it's, you can discuss like scaling and stuff like that if things are going well. But first, the thing is like, can I do what I absolutely love and make enough money rather than doing something I don't love as much
Mhm.
for more money?
Yeah, and I mean that's definitely right because life's short. Money is very helpful, and I'm not gonna like disparage anybody who takes the less fulfilling job because it makes a whole ton of money, because money powers a lot of things, and when you can do fulfilling things outside of work, then that's great. But um, yeah, I definitely I did not expect to love game writing as much as I do, and I really think part of that is because I get to share it with so many other people, right? Like there's
Yeah.
something really cool about um, hearing other people talk about having played through my adventures or using a subclass that I made. Um, that's just like, oh, it's like watching other people watch a movie that you really love, right? Where you're like waiting for them to like, okay, did you love it or did you hate? Like, what did you think? Let's talk about it. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and
Short plug, if you want to talk to Sarah about the Siren preview that they wrote for the Vineyard, I will include the Discord chat for just all of the playtesting that we're doing for the Vineyard.
there
And
you
if you
go.
want Sarah to know that you hated it, as long as you do it respectfully
Yes.
and don't get banned that way, then you're more than likely to. You're more than welcome to. And of course, the Vineyard uh, PDF will be linked. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Nah. No. No, we can.
Hated that
For sure.
project.
Yeah, God, yeah, the vineyard thing kind of sucks. No. No, absolutely. Um, I mean, I had a lot of fun writing it. I hope everybody out there has a lot of fun reading it and using her in their games because,
Hmm.
yeah. And I think that was one of the things that got me sort of on board the Vineyard Project, I think, was when we talked to Gen Con and you were like, I have this idea for this like character and just sort of this, evil, tragic Dorian Gray sort of concept. And I really, yeah, it just, yeah,
It spoke to you.
it did. It did.
Yeah, it spoke to you. Yeah, I for sure after I remember running into you because we were both like connected through Cobalt Press,
Hmm.
and seeing the D20 tattoos, like, oh, that's a nerd right there. Go talk to that nerd. Um, but yeah, so we were talking, and um, I knew based on your writing, which I'd read a small piece of through Candlekeep,
Hmm.
your adventure writing, and just this woman writes really creepy shit. So
Which
I
is
am.
weird. I didn't think that would be me, but apparently it's me. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I think that's what I have the most fun writing is the weird, creepy horror stuff. And maybe that's because I really enjoy playing that. Like I love Curse of Strahd.
Mhm.
I love playing like Call of Cthulhu, um, and things like that. Even though I don't like watching horror.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a big wimp. I'm actually a
Yeah.
huge wimp, so I don't watch horror movies because I learned that like I'll just spend the next 2 weeks not being able to sleep.
Right.
I don't really play horror games usually for the same reason. Um, I used to read a lot more horror novels, like when I was in middle school and like high school. I used to read a lot of like R.L. Stein, like Fear Street stuff.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah.
And like I loved Dean Koontz, even though he's ridiculous and all of his stories are ridiculous, but I loved his stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, but so yeah, I don't know. Like when I wrote A Deep and Creeping Darkness for Candlekeep, it just was this thing. It just
We have to talk
it
about that. Tell me
manifested.
about this. Tell me about what can you tell me that's not under NDA? Let's go. Let's do it.
um. Oh, geez. I don't know. Yeah, we were given pretty open briefs as far as like what we were asked to write. They basically were like, we need a mystery and it needs to be connected to a book found in Candlekeep. Um, and the name of the book is the name of the adventure. Okay, go. And there was like a pitch process where we pitched our adventure concept and then they would approve it and then we wrote it. But we didn't have. There wasn't, because of the nature of Candlekeep, I think, because it was an anthology rather than a larger adventure. There wasn't any communication between me and the other writers. In fact, none of us knew who the other writers were until they basically announced all of us. So then it was a whole big scramble of, oh, yay, that's you. Like, let's connect on, Twitter and social media.
Mhm.
Um, so no, but it was overall a really good experience for me. Um, it's definitely interesting. Part of being a freelancer is you're a writer for hire. So at the end of the day, you don't own any of your stuff anymore, right? And so when you turn over a project, it may not always emerge in published form in the way that you turned it over.
Right.
Sometimes it's just small edits or tweaks. Sometimes, after if it's an adventure and it's been through playtesting a whole bunch of times and there's certain parts of the adventure that keep, becoming a stumbling block for players. They have to rework whole parts of the adventure, or especially with Wizards of the Coast, they're very particular about like their lore and everything else, and so it's like making sure it fits in with their IP and what they want to present. It's an interesting experience of building up thicker skin. I'm sorry if you can hear my dog barking in the background.
Just a little bit, just a little woof.
Just a little bork. Um, that not being too precious with your stuff, I think, is really important um, when it comes to freelancing, along with building up that ability to put yourself out there. That also, like, when you finally see your stuff in print, it may not be entirely in the way that you turned it over, and that's not necessarily a reflection on you as a writer. That they have a lot of things to balance, and I'm seeing that too now from like my side of the Draco work, that I had all these freelance writers come on to do this adventure, and I'm putting all their stuff together, and I have to make sure it fits and all the little bits fit together, and and so there's inevitably going to be revisions and edits and changes I'm going to have to make, and it's not because they didn't do an amazing job. It's just because, oh, this doesn't quite fit with this thing that happens over here, or oh, this element of the lore is a little bit different. um so it's definitely a you have to learn to be okay with it, I think. So I think I got
Yeah.
way off track. I'm sorry.
No, no, that's perfectly fine. I'm gonna ask, like, obviously, if you can't talk about it, just that we don't have to. But I was just curious, like, how many drafts and like how many times did you pitch before one got accepted and things like that? Like when you were already in the process of like, hey, we're gonna work with you and we'd like to see your pitches and everything like that. Because I know that sometimes that can be the longest process is the pitching and then.
Yeah, so I had a pitch for me personally. I pitched A Deep and Creeping Darkness, but it was a little bit different when I originally pitched it. Excuse me. And so they came back with, like, this isn't quite working the way it is. Can we maybe change these few things? And I was like, okay, I revised my pitch, but then I also panicked and pitched a whole second option, which I probably didn't. I'm like, if you really hate that one, here's another one that we could do. And they were like, no, no, it's okay. We can do the first one. So I think I got a little like, I undermined myself, on that one.
Mhm.
Um, and then there was, it's been a while at this point. I'm trying to remember the exact process. It was like a pitch, and then we had a first draft, and then they sent back feedback, and we had to revise our first draft to a second draft, and I think that was the entirety of it. Um, yeah, I think that was the process itself. Um, yeah. Sorry, I lost the I lost the
No,
through
you're
line.
good.
My
You're
dog came over
good.
and started like
Yeah,
bothering.
that's what dogs do.
Yeah,
Um,
especially him. He's frustrating. I love him. I love him so much. He's such a sweet
here's you
boy.
talking to somebody. Yeah,
Yes,
it's
he's like,
like
"Oh, you're recording? I have to come over here and stick my nose." Yeah.
Okay. And what do you see yourself doing in the next couple of years with your career, do you think, that you're allowed to talk about?
Well, um, this. I will probably be theoretically, I have to. I owe more novels to my publisher, so I should probably do that at some point.
Yeah.
I keep getting distracted by game writing, to be honest, because it's shorter
Mhm.
and more immediate gratification.
Yeah.
Um, I would definitely love to take on some bigger projects like what I'm doing with Draco. Um, like I did a bigger project with Ghostfire Gaming. I worked on their Fables subscription adventure thing where I did one of the chapters for the Citadel of the Unseen Sun, which came out earlier this year, I think.
That Monty Cook?
Ghostfire Games.
Ghostfire? Oh, okay, okay, okay. Yeah.
Um, and that was a pretty sizable project. I think it was like a 40,000 word project, which was the biggest I had done at the time. But
Okay.
I would really love to be able to be involved in like a bigger adventure book, like instead of just writing, one shot for an anthology, to be able to like develop and be one of the main writers for like a full adventure, like a Curse of Strahd or something like that. So
Right. Yeah, great. Great. That's wonderful. We'll talk after we get off the podcast. Actually, we haven't defined that part of our relationship yet, but that's coming. Yeah, and I don't wanna proposition you while you're on the podcast
No
because
pressure, no pressure.
that would be rude. Okay. So, yeah, I think we are open now. If you have anything that you wanted to talk about, besides your Kickstarter,
Oh gosh. Um,
which we've included in the show notes, if you wanna
okay,
go
yeah.
check it out.
It's there. It's got a lot of really cool stuff. It's not just the book. It's like dice and handouts and carrot sheet and there's a lot. Like Draco does amazing. They don't do things by halves. Like they go all in. It's pretty good. Um, gosh, let's see. I think the project. So I've got a project over on Kobold Press. Actually, it's on their blog called Haunted Items, and it's a series of trinkets. Basically, the first one was a walking cane, and the second one was a collar, like a dog collar, um, that are possessed by the spirit of normally like the former owner. And there's a whole there's like a story blurb about it, and then basically each item has like tiers of powers or things that you can unlock, or like little quests that you have to do to like appease or help the spirit that's attached to the item. um, and I had a really fun time doing that. It's ongoing. I think there's 2 out right now, and there's a couple more coming. um, and I think they're really cool, and I think they are like pretty rich for like story and quest hooks and things like that for DMs. So if y'all want to check that out, it's pretty cool on the Cold Mold Press blog, and I'll make sure we
So
have a link for that too.
yes,
So,
yes, we will add that. Okay, super cool. And of course, anything else? Or are you good with that?
I'm good. I guess you can find me on Twitter at
Hmm.
Unfettered Muse, and I have a website. And yeah, any Vineyard fans, I will try to be in the Discord. I'm definitely not quite sure still. Like, I'm balancing the whole at what point should creators get involved in the conversation versus like, am
Right,
I stifling conversation by being like, no, this is the way it goes, versus
right.
like being part of the like back and forth. So I'm still learning. I'm trying, y'all. So,
I fully understand that because as a pro GM, like a lot of the time, what I came to was like, you don't want to tell someone giving you feedback that like, no, this is the way that it works, because then it's an argument. Like,
mm-hmm.
you want to just the most of what I ask is really just like sort of leading questions, or like exploratory questions, I should say, in which I'm asking to get more information. Because if I have that relationship with someone at the table, that becomes confrontational and like not
Yeah,
welcome. And I want people to feel like they can give me their honest feedback.
right,
So my default response is normally thank you for the feedback.
right. Yeah, it's like
Because
thank you.
yeah, it's very difficult to like, you don't yeah, I don't want people to, in this position, especially for playtesting, put them in the position to be like, they're not wrong, they can have an opinion about it. And
Oh
we want
yeah.
to hear those opinions, especially like those who have run the Siren, or
Hmm.
this future release that we're going to have as well around Valentine's Day. Um,
Yay.
yeah, so Thank you so much to everyone who listened, and you can check out those links in the description and check out Sarah because she's a great writer.
Thanks.
All right, and scene. I will push the button here.